While we stand, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Father Alex, why don't you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. All right, we'll go around the horn. First, we'll recognize a quorum. Kevin Law, Chairman of the Council.
Linda Arman.
Alexander Carlutzis.
Coley. Joe Veretta.
Bob Stafford, President of the Alumni Association.
Christopher Hahn.
Jim Morgo.
Sam Stanley, President Stony Brook.
Right. Mike?
Michael Bernstein.
Dexter Bailey.
Nicholas Scabetto.
Richard Reeder.
Lynn Johnson.
Susan Blum.
Judy Greiman.
Ben Kushansky.
Ruben Pasternak.
Matt Whalen.
Kevin Moriarty.
Carol Gizzi. Marissa Trachtenberg. Carolyn Mondoro. Susan Hines.
Susan, okay, I'll recognize a quorum. We need to approve the minutes of the February 6, 2017 meeting. Motion by Linda, seconded by Jim. Any comments, revisions, additions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Chairman's report, I have none, and I'm going to hand it right over to Sam for the President's report.
Thank you. Best chairman's report ever.
This is quite the efficient meeting.
Soul of which. We've got a lot to talk about. So we had a great, let me begin again by welcoming everybody. We're getting near the end of the semester, so thank you for the students for attending, because finals are coming up, so that's exciting always. And Cole, good to see you. Joe as well. We had a great Stars of Stony Brook Gala. So as I think many of you know, Joseph Biden, the 47th Vice President of the United States, was the honoree. He gave a very heartfelt and stirring speech about science and cancer and the moonshot and how much the current effort means to him. Tied in very nicely to the work that's going on at Stony Brook at our Cancer Center, which was celebrated in that evening as well. And then, of course, student scholarships. And overall, and Dexter, you can talk about this very briefly, but when we name, do you want to talk about how we do things for the gala and how we come up with the number we come up with, the final number for the gala?
Yes, yeah. So every year, once we determine what the beneficiary organization is going to be besides student scholarships, the team starts fundraising. So in this case, Youssef Moon and Kate Camming, who's our lead fundraiser there, they start working on gifts with donors. And actually, the week before the gala, they closed almost $2 million worth of commitments from donors that wanted to have it pledged, or at least verbally pledged, before they go in to the event, so we can do the announcement. In addition to that, as ticket sales happen, people can either earmark their dollars for the Cancer Center as a primary beneficiary, or for student scholarships. So for student scholarships, I think about $2.2 million, and then about a little over $4 million for cancer research in all different areas. So it was a really good program. That's what we do every year, and then we announce the number.
And the turnout was incredible. So I think our previous record for turnout had been 760. We had 870 people at the gala, so it was completely sold out and almost standing room.
Killed me. It's the first one I missed in 7 years, and of course, Joe was one of my fans. Biggest. I'm one of his biggest fans.
Yeah, I didn't know he knew you.
He's one of my fans too. Just like Sam. So I heard it was spectacular. So congratulations.
Yeah, it really was good. And just for those of you who weren't there, one of the striking things was Vice President Biden was served his dinner, but then people started to come up and wanted to meet him, so he just forgot about his dinner, stood up, and soon a huge line formed, and he just met everybody basically who wanted to come meet him during the time. And I kept saying to the Secret Service, I said, do you want me to tell people to sit down and so he can have his dinner and stuff? They said, no, this is what he loves to do. He's in his element. This is what he wants to do. And so that is
Retail
what he
politician.
did. So he was very good about that. As Dexter told you, we've had a number of successes in fundraising, and we're now up to about 532 million. Is that out of date now, or are we? That's about right.
A little bit, but that's good.
532 million towards our goal of $600 million for the campaign for Stony Brook. We're going to talk later today about the budget, and so this fundraising again has never been more important in terms of our ability to maintain quality and achieve excellence at the university. So again, thank you to Dexter and his team for your continued effort in bringing that campaign to fruition. We had a very large grant to Ben Loft. This is not a grant so much as it also is support for a major program. But this is the program that supports 9/11 World Trade Center responders. And it was a $60 million grant from the National Institute for Occupational Health and Safety and Health. And it's actually expanding its space now in providing care for these individuals, and it's going to actually now have an office in our new COMAC facility. And Ken, maybe talk very quickly about the COMAC opening, because this body hadn't heard about it. So.
Right, so this is a project that's been in the works for about a year and a half. To make a bigger impact, to have Stony Brook Medicine make a bigger impact on the healthcare of Suffolk County, we decided to expand west and at least 120,000 square feet of space in Comac. It's basically at the intersection of the Northern State Parkway and the Sunken Meadow Parkway, extremely geographically favorably located. And we had a ribbon cutting ceremony. The clinic opened about a couple of weeks before, so it's been open now a little over a month. We're already active in a lot of subspecialties. We're calling it advanced specialty care. There are 30, actually greater than 30 specialties and subspecialties all under one roof, with a full range of radiologic services, laboratory services, etc. And included in that is the World Trade Center Clinic. They're leasing about 20,000 square feet of space, both for their clinical presence and for their administrative offices that are overseeing this very, very large service contract for taking care of first responders and responders to the World Trade Center disaster. So we're very excited about it. Sam was on hand for the ribbon cutting, which needed 2 cuts in order to cut the ribbon, but otherwise it went flawlessly.
I think you were holding that scissors too, right? So, kudos to Ken. He was really behind this, and it's a beautiful facility. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, hopefully you don't have to see it because you're sick, but it would be nice to take a look at it, because it's really a spectacular facility, and I think, as Ken said, really extends our footprint west, which is something we've been looking to do for some time.
We should have a board meeting west.
Yeah,
So did you hear that?
yeah.
No, we
Future place for board meetings.
For the one person that comes from the
Jack,
west.
Jack,
I'm heading west afterwards, so it's fine with me.
I gotta go to Union now, but
Yeah, I
that's
will.
after this.
That's a great idea, but thank you. That's a great idea, so we'll do that.
It's very self-serving.
No. So,
No service like that.
Started at 10.
in 2013, Stony Brook established the Discovery Prize, and this was from a grant that came from the Stony Brook Foundation. And the idea of the prize was to fund cutting-edge research that was so innovative but risky that it would not be funded by the National Science Foundation or the National Institutes of Health, the DOE, because they would see it was just too out there, basically. But the potential impact could be extraordinary. And so we had the first event, as I said, in 2015, actually, I think is when it was awarded. So this year we did another one in 2017. We waited 2 years to do it. A number of individuals submitted to a panel of distinguished judges from Stony Brook University. The numbers, and this is all for young faculty members generally, those applications were looked at, whittled down to 4 finalists. Those 4 finalists then underwent training with the Alda Center for Communicating Science on how to talk about their projects and communicate them more effectively, and then presented to a panel of judges, very distinguished judges. So Duncan Haldane, who won the 2016 Nobel Prize for Physics from Princeton University, Barbara Yatsik, former Stony Brook faculty member, distinguished professor, member of the National Academy of Sciences, who is now at Berkeley, and Jim Simons, also a member of the National Academy of Science. And those 3 judges, they were great presentations. They were like TED Talk presentations, and it was to win the $200,000 Discovery Prize. And at the end of the day, Thomas Allison, an assistant professor in the Department of Chemistry and Physics, won the prize. And his project relates to new ways, essentially, to visualize atomic interactions using a very specialized form of laser. And the interesting thing about this is he believes that ultimately this machine could replace things like the National Light Source Synchrotron 2, the $1 billion synchrotron that sits at Brookhaven Laboratory. He believes for far less money and in something like the size of this, smaller than this table, you could actually build something that could reproduce it. So it's a bold idea, it's an exciting idea, and we'll see how Thomas does with it. But it was a great day. We had standing room only again in the Wong Theater for this. Tremendous turnout from the campus, and very exciting day. We have a new chancellor for SUNY. I'm sure some of you have read in the papers. Christina Johnson was named the 13th chancellor of SUNY. Announced on April 24th. I've met Christina Johnson before. She was the provost at Johns Hopkins. She served as provost at Johns Hopkins. She has been in the Department of Energy, appointed by Barack Obama to be undersecretary in the Department of Undersecretary of Energy and in the Department of Energy. She has been dean. She was dean of the School of Engineering at Duke University for a number of years, so she has a very distinguished record in science. She's a member of the National Academy of Engineering, and brings, as I said, certainly knowledge of research universities, entrepreneurship. She started a number of her own companies, so she'll be, I think, an exciting addition as the new chancellor of SUNY, and I believe is starting September 4th, I think will be her first date. And she's already reached out, I think, to presidents to meet before that time. So I'm hoping we can get her to Stony Brook campus, but if not, I'll meet her wherever she wants to meet and have a chance to talk to her about the exciting things that are happening at Stony
She seems
Brook.
very impressive.
Yeah, she's very impressive, and I encourage you to look up her credentials. I think, is there anything else I wanted to talk about? I just wanted to remind you that as we had talked about, we had consulted you. We made the decision to close our Stony Brook Manhattan campus. That has completed, and we had success in relocating some of the programs that really were dependent on that area, and so some have relocated to a major program associated with the School of Social Welfare, relocated to SUNY Optometry building downtown. We had people in the fine arts actually were able to find another building to help run. There's cinema, film MFA film program has relocated. So I think we're able to accommodate most of the programs and yet save now on a very high rent that we would have been paying down there. So as we'll talk about again, as I said in a second, we're in a tight budget climate, and this is a part of a response to that budget climate.
Did we get out of the lease, or are we subletting? Or?
No, we're done. We're out of it completely. So we've moved out, and they'll find somebody who can afford it. So
Now, when the kids come out of that program that are in it now, will those programs stay in existence, or will they just attrit out?
No. So
graduate
those
out?
programs I talked about that transferred out of Manhattan. So we had, there was not a lot of use of the facility, which was the challenge for it. But there were some programs that really found that location important, felt that location was important. So those programs are going to continue now.
Just
and
in
so it
their
wasn't
new
temporary.
locations, right.
They're just going to go into their new locations, right? And
Great.
so, and in the case of the MFA, they'll see how it works. I mean, they're going to
Mhm.
see how many students they can attract and whether because they're paying the rent themselves out of the proceeds from the tuition they're getting. They're paying the rental on it. It's not coming from central funds to support it. So
Gotcha.
before, basically, central funds of the university was paying the rent basically on the facility, and so we've changed that model now. So I want to invite everybody to our 57th commencement ceremony on Friday, May 19th. It'll be at 11 at Kenneth Laval Stadium. It's going to be exciting. Michael J. Fox will receive an honorary degree of Doctor of Fine Arts. I don't need to tell you anybody who Michael J. Fox is, and we're very excited that he'll be coming to Stony Brook. Conservationist and anthropologist Prince Emmanuel de Merode will receive a Doctor of Humane Letters. He is the Director and Chief Warden of Virunga National Park, where he has been working to protect gorillas. And he's a heroic individual. He actually was shot a year, maybe 2 years ago, suffered 2 gunshot wounds essentially from poachers in trying to defend the gorillas there. He actually survived. He will be here to receive an honorary degree for his work. Jonathan Oringer, who's a graduate of '96 of our computer science department, is the founder of Shutterstock, and which many of you may know is an online service that provides access to photos, essentially, so commercial grade photos. And incredibly successful company. And so Jonathan is a very successful entrepreneur. We're receiving it. Dr. Arthur Kremer, who's done work in cognitive neuroscience, he's a graduate from 75, will also receive an honorary degree. And Frank Hsu, who's an astrophysicist, will receive an honorary degree as well. So it's going to be, I think, an exciting day, and I really welcome everybody there. Don't have much else to report, I think, in these areas. Women's lacrosse is ranked number 4 right now in the nation. They are getting started, or may have already started the playoffs. I'm not sure
Friday.
regarding these
Friday.
playoffs. Friday, okay. But they're an outstanding team, and as I say, 4th ranked in the country right now. So could compete for the national championship. We'll see. And I think I'll stop there with the regular project. So I wanted to update you on a couple things that have been in the news before Judy goes to, and we go a little more detailed thing on the budget. I wanted to talk a little bit about Excelsior, the free tuition program that was passed. It'll come up in Judy's budget, but I wanted to just give you my take on it because it's a very, very interesting program. I went to the Association of American Universities AAU meeting last week, and while I was there, that's all people came up to ask me about. Not how you doing, Sam, or anything, but tell me about Excelsior, New York, free tuition program, because it's gathered national attention. So I'll give a very brief thing, but then answer your question. So the first thing I told people, and I gave this presentation at AAU, so the first thing I told them was, the thing you have to understand is that New York State has already had a very generous tuition assistance program, and that's been in place since 1974. That's the TAP program. It covers tuition only, goes to New York residents attending in-state post-secondary institutions. It's based on combined New York State taxable income that cannot exceed $80,000. You have to take 12 credits each semester to be eligible, and they have to be towards your semester. And it's graduated in terms of how much money you can get. So full TAP certainly I think is around under 40,000 or 30,000 to get full TAP.
Yeah, under 30 would be close to
Under 30 to get full TAP. So awards decrease as income levels rise. But next year, full TAP I think will be $5,165 essentially. So it's very significant, and it's awarded to both public and private students attending both public and private schools. So that's a very, very generous program, and very few states have something like that. So Excelsior was the program that the governor came up with and was passed by the legislature. And Excelsior is a little different kind of award. So you can receive both, for example, you can receive TAP and you can receive Pell. And SUNY schools have been covering, after the SUNY 2020 plan, we've been covering the gap between what TAP provides and what tuition actually is charged at SUNY. Our schools have been contributing that gap for families making under $70,000 a year, right? So already, for students in that income group, tuition was already covered, basically. And if you have a Pell Award as well, right, so the federal grant program, you also could have your tuition completely covered. So many students are already essentially attending SUNY schools and Stony Brook, quote, tuition free, based on the grants they could get from TAP and from Pell. But what Excelsior did was extend that kind of benefit to higher income brackets. So basically, for family AGIs under $100,000 this year, for $110,000 this year, for $125,000 by 2019 and 2020 thereafter, it provides completely free tuition for those students. Now, it's a last dollar in program, so what that means is if you have a TAP award and you have a Pell Grant, that counts towards it. And so whatever monies you have there, Excelsior is not going to cover that amount. It'll only cover the difference between that amount and what it actually costs in terms of tuition. So our tuition is around $64.50 right now, is that correct? $64.70 right now. So let's say you were able to have a small TAP award based on your income. Excelsior would cover the difference between that small TAP award and what it took to cover the $64.70. So that's what Excelsior does. It says your last dollar award up to $5,500. The way they wrote the legislation was complicated. So that $5,500 is supposedly covered by the, quote, the state in a $162 million allocation. So the state put in $162 million to pay for this. But they also put in another $20 million that goes to SUNY to cover the gap between that $5,500 and the $64.70. right? So there's two pots of money, each of which is supposed to go to support Excelsior. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So it's pretty restrictive in terms of the qualifications. So you have to take 30 credits over the course of the year, at least 12 per semester. You have to maintain an adequate GPA, and that wasn't specified what that adequate GPA is. So it's not clear. Institutions are going to have to kind of decide what they believe an adequate GPA is, but you have to maintain an adequate GPA. You must agree to live in New York State for years equal to the duration of the award received. So if you receive 3 years of the award, then you have to live in New York State 3 years afterwards. And it would convert to a loan if it moves out of state. It also converts to a loan if you don't make the 30 credit requirements. You have to pay it back. It converts to a loan. If you don't maintain the adequate GPA, it converts to a loan as well. So it's pretty restrictive, and there's a fair amount of possibility that people signing up for it could have difficulty maintaining it and might lose it, which then creates issues around payback. How do you get people to pay back, how it's administered, and so on. And the other thing that's a problem for us, so I'm being frank here, is that tuition may increase only 4 years, every 4 years for people in the Excelsior plan. So in other words, the tuition now for entering in, the tuition next year, and the year after that is going to be the same for everybody in Excelsior, frozen at our 2017.
Even though you got permission to increase it $200?
Even though we got permission to increase $200, it doesn't increase for Excelsior students.
Sam,
So,
do we know how many of our undergraduates actually have 30 credits a year? Do we know what?
We're
Or
running
send
all
another-
those numbers, Jim, and we're getting the ideas of the numbers under 100,000, the number who actually complete 30 credits. When they complete them, do they complete them in 2 semesters? Do they take 4 semesters, including summer and winter term? It is incredibly complicated to get our hands around the exact number of students who will be eligible. But we're in the midst right now of running all those numbers. Today is deposit day, so we'll know for our new students coming in what some of those numbers are based on their FAFSA. But we're in the midst of running all that right now.
so last time we looked, it was about, we have many students who certainly qualify in that under 125,000.
Yeah.
But a number of them are already covered by Pell and TAP, so
Yeah.
they're not going to count. Last time we looked, it was a little under 3,000 students that we thought our current enrollees would qualify for Excelsior program, about 3,000.
And is it an application? You apply for Excelsior, so if you
Yes.
don't wanna be under those restrictions and Pell and TAP is enough, you don't have to.
Yeah, no, exactly correct, exactly correct. It's an application program.
What is that percentage then? If it's 3,000, what is the?
Yeah, like what percent is part-time students here and what time?
That's what I'm
full-time?
asking.
You have that
Well,
ballpark?
you have to be full-time, so
Yeah.
you have to be full-time to apply, so we're only talking about full-time and
Right,
undergraduate.
but we're
So-
trying to figure out how many wouldn't qualify, so about what percentage of our population is part-time students?
Very small.
Very
Small.
Very
Yeah,
small.
yeah.
Whereas Jim, at your community college, it's probably 50%,
This is almost meaningless for the community college.
because 50%.
Because they don't take the credits.
Yeah.
Particularly with remedial courses, which is no credit. And then you'd have to
Alright.
take, 15 credits a semester is a heavy load.
Yeah.
That's
So-
5 courses.
Yeah.
So
Maybe
so-
the community college should figure out a way to make those remedial credits count towards this somehow.
Yeah, that's a state thing. It's not the college. It's SUNY, not the college.
So we're, as Matt said, we're still understanding completely this. The other thing is, if demand is higher, right? So there's tremendous concern about what the demand is going to be for this, and we believe already it is changing what our class looks like. We are going to have probably more people accepting us than we had in the past. So in other words, our yield is going to go up because we're having students now who probably might have elected to go somewhere else are now choosing to go to
Choosing us.
Stony Brook
Yeah.
because of this free tuition.
The New York Times had that on the front page yesterday,
Yep.
and so we may fall into that category as well, seeing an uptick in people choosing us based on.
I think our in-state numbers are going to go up.
Do we need to, for capacity reasons, cut back on people that can afford to pay? Hope not.
We're not shaping the class that way as things stand, but we're going to have to look at the financial impact of this and understand exactly how it goes. Right now, it wasn't passed at the time we did our admissions and did our acceptances, so what you're seeing is the effect. There's been no controls put in for this within how we're accepting and not accepting the class, how we're looking at making the class. We do like to see diversity in our class makeup,
Right.
and generally we tend to promote, across the board in terms of diversity, and I think we're going to continue to do that. But how we shape class in response to this, I think, is something we're still talking about and trying to understand. That's the program. The interesting thing is, if it gets oversubscribed, then what happens if there's not enough money to support it? Then there's supposed to be a lottery. So supposedly, the HESC who administered it is supposed to have a lottery, and nobody knows how that would work. And so what are the consequences of this? Very quickly. So first of all, small privates are very concerned about it, because small private universities, upstate, Long Island, other areas are very concerned that this is, and it applies to CUNY and SUNY, are very concerned that it will take students away from them. In the past, many of them have discounted their tuition to close to the SUNY level. So maybe if they were charging $20,000 a year for tuition, they might actually discount it down to $7,000 or $8,000 or something, and so they could compete with SUNY schools. You can't discount to zero, so they can't discount to zero. So it essentially takes their ability to discount to those levels away. So they're very concerned about it. And it's when I talk to my colleagues in the Long Island Regional Association of Higher Education Leaders, Larachi, they're very concerned about it. The privates are very concerned. The second thing is that I think because this is so restrictive, we are concerned that a lot of people will enroll without really understanding the restrictions on it. We're concerned that people will change their behaviors in terms of families to qualify for it. So you'll have people who may say, I don't longer need to save for college because tuition's going to be free, because we'll just be able to go to SUNY and CUNY because tuition is free. So we'll stop putting aside money for tuition because it's going to be paid for, and yet then if things fall apart, suddenly you're on the hook for a bill. We are trying to figure out how we manage it at our end in terms of what does adequate GPA mean, and then if if there's issues involved in terms of somebody dropping out, who's responsible for collecting the tuition back? I mean, who's responsible for actually collecting that money
All these
back again?
tiny little details.
Tiny
haven't
details, right?
really,
Figure that out.
yet.
Figure that out, and so it is challenging
We're
from
talking
this
about
kind of perspective.
changing behavior. I'm thinking of a student who, for whatever reason, personal or academic, has to drop a course. And he's in the program, but then if you drop the
Done.
course,
You're done.
And it's a one-time, it's not a.
One time, once you're out, you're out. Yeah,
Yeah.
once you're out, you're out.
So this is there's a lot of spin going on from the proponents and the opponents of this, and actually this is the first time I really understand it.
Yeah.
So this was very helpful.
Thanks.
And if I'm understanding it correctly, those who would normally get TAP or Pell will continue to do so, and the ones who will actually get free tuition, free being, they may not have to do anything out of pocket, might be those in the 100 to 125 range over. And so it really is a middle class
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
Because everybody else is going to be obligated to go for the TAP and Pell first.
They have to. Correct. Yeah, I think that's a fair way to describe it. I mean, I think it's something that's going to benefit families who are not incredibly wealthy, but for whom college has been a burden, and it's designed to address the issue of accumulated debt associated with college.
And this is just for tuition, has nothing to do with room and board?
Correct.
Is that the same with Pell and TAP too? It only goes towards
Pell
tuition?
can be applied to both.
Whatever your total cost are?
Correct. TAP is tuition.
wasn't there some concession
Or books.
made to the private colleges because of their alarm?
There's a small increase in TAP that's available to private schools, but you can't raise tuition if you want to receive it. You can't raise tuition more than $500, and they have to match the increase too. So the private schools have to match the increase. So there's a small increase to TAP for them, but they have to put in matching funds for that. And is there a tuition increase restriction too? I can't remember. That was in the previous legislation? No? Okay. No, wrong. Okay, sorry. So yeah, so it's very, very interesting.
And it goes into effect for September?
Yeah, it's in effect now. Yeah. So it's going to influence our current class.
Be interesting to see again,
Yeah.
an update in the fall, Matt, on what the impacts. By then, you guys should probably have a better handle on it.
The other thing I was just going to say is, of course, since it requires a legislative, since there had to be money put in to support it, to the program, then, within, Judy will talk about the budget in a second, there's a maintenance of effort clause in the budget So we have again for SUNY this idea that our budget can't be cut over the next 4 years. It doesn't mean it'll be increased,
But it
right,
can't.
which has been our problem, but it can't be cut. So that's good news.
Mhm.
One of our concerns about this program is right now the money is allocated to pay for it. What if sometime in the future, and this will be apropos to something Ken will talk about later, what if sometime in the future the state decides, well, we really don't want to pay for this anymore, or we can't afford to pay for all of it anymore, then, would the universities be left holding the bag for the program? Would we be required to put in? As it stands now, as we talked about, we're already putting in this TAP gap. We're already paying out of our money, essentially, this gap in tuition assistance. That's coming out of the tuition revenue we generate. We provide the support for our economically disadvantaged students, and it's something we wanted to do to make sure that they weren't disadvantaged. But that always, we always have to pay attention to that in the future to make sure this continues. And does it go up? I mean, if the demand turns out to be increasing, instead of doing a lottery, do they make the decision to just increase the amount of money in Excelsior? My guess, would be if I were in charge of it, I would think you might have to, because if it really becomes a very popular program, if people are relocating to New York, because it's a place where you have free tuition in state colleges, then I think you're probably going to have to maintain the program at a high level. That would just be my bias.
Right.
We'll see.
That is fascinating.
Any distinctions between how this applies to the university centers and the regular SUNY colleges? Everybody's the same?
None. And I think, this is going to be good for the comprehensives and the technical colleges in SUNY. They've seen declining enrollment. So, Stony Brook has not seen declining enrollment, but they have seen declining enrollments. And so I think this is going to boost their enrollments. And their cost to educate is lower than ours. So the tuition freeze is less of an issue for them than it is for us. So I think it's going to be a positive for them. I think they're going to see their enrollments go up.
Do we still cover the TAP gap, or does Excelsior do that now?
No, see, that's a great question, Lyndon. I would love to have seen that change, but it didn't. So we still cover the TAP gap. So, so we're still paying that. Then the other thing I just wanted to update you on, and again, before Judy goes through the budgets, is that there's as you go around campus, there's a lot happening, and I just wanted to update you kind of on capital projects. So very quickly. There are three major ones in design and planning. One is the Innovation and Discovery Center. This was, we had help for funding this by the Regional Economic Development Council with Kevin Chairs. The design is completed. The advertising for construction bids are going to be sent out May 12th. It's a $62 million project, 60,000 square feet of flexible lab space, including bays. This is, what we've called a mezzanine building designed to help take companies out of our incubator, allow them to grow, take some larger companies perhaps that are in what's now called the Excelsior program, or was startup, or there's a couple of other incubator programs that we have designed to attract larger companies and provide space for them in our R&D park. So we're very excited about it. We also plan to have some scientists and engineers in that space as well, because we found that's a good mix to not just have companies, but have some of our own faculty in the space as well. So that construction should begin this summer and has a 20-month completion schedule. There's going to be an indoor athletic facility. Early stages of design are in progress. It's a $10 million project for design and construction of an indoor practice facility with a small support structure. This was funded in part by the state and in part by private philanthropy, so it's a mix of both those, really pretty much a split of private philanthropy and money from the state. And this is going to be available for all sports, essentially, at Stony Brook to provide an indoor facility. Designed in terms of what football needs, but for all sports as well. And then we're hoping, and I think we're on the right track, that the $75 million that have been allocated for the Institute for Discovery and Innovation in Medicine and Engineering, the IDIME building, will be released. That would be the 70,000 square foot building, which would be the fourth building at our R&D park. And that again is we're working on design, but I think we're hopefully very close of, fingers crossed, of getting that done. Meanwhile, construction continues on the MART and the hospital pavilion. We've talked about that program before. That's a $460 million program as it stands now. In terms of cost, it's got 295,000 square foot research facility and a hospital pavilion, which is a 225,000 square foot clinical facility, 300-seat auditorium. It's going to be a spectacular building. You see it as you drive by. The wonderful thing about the hospital bed tower is that we can grow on it, so we could add an additional 11 stories, essentially 10 stories, 10 stories to that building. I'm exaggerating, 10 stories to that building. So that really could become the future hospital when needed. we could use the current hospital space for other buildings. So that's spectacular. Right now, we're just happy to get the first phase of it done, but there is the possibility of the second phase. Exciting is the student union rehab. For those of you who alum, this is one of the hub buildings for campus, where many of the buildings for student clubs are held. It's a $65 million gut renovation of the building, so it's really a complete renovation of it. It's going to transform it into a really modern facility which will house most student services. So things like the bursar's office and other services are going to relocate to student union. So you really have a one-stop area where students can go to get many of the services they need. And so
This is
we're
the old
excited
student
about it.
union?
Old student union buildings being completely gut rehabbed.
It
Pritchard.
was sort of a dump when I went here.
It was sort of a dump when you went here, and
That was for
and
Asian.
believe it or not, it hadn't gotten better. So,
Yeah.
at the time, so we're excited about it. The Pritchard pool we're waiting one more approval. Apparently, there's one individual who certifies pools, and they've been away for a week or something. So, but we're hoping they'll come back.
I bet there's a
and,
lobbyist for that.
And
Pool, that
there
pool
probably is.
Probably
When that happens, the
track
pool
that guy
will
down.
open. So it's a beautiful pool.
And where is that gonna be?
That's right next to Pritchard, so it's
Okay.
the
In
same
Pritchard,
location.
right?
Yeah, it's in Pritchard.
Right.
Yeah,
I thought it was
associated
open.
with the building.
Yeah.
You can't swim in it yet because its
Just
official test hasn't been done. At least last
You
time I
already
talked
swim
to
in it?
Sean.
No, I haven't swum in it, but I saw it. I was like, oh wow, that looks cool.
It's going to be a very nice facility.
Michael,
Again,
how
very
are you?
excited about it. It's been a long time coming, but it's also going to allow us to restart women's swimming and diving. It's going to restart as a sport, so we're excited about
Is that gonna be open to students and employees and, professors, or is it gonna be open to the community, like the gym, or not decided
So
yet?
we're working through the hours on that, but certainly it's open to students, certainly it's open to the teams, and certainly it's open to faculty and staff. And I think we're working through how the community will participate, but in the past, it certainly has been open for community as well.
Maybe like high school dives and things like that?
Yeah, again, we'll have to figure out exactly
Figure
what
out.
demand is. I think the first thing we always do is we want to make sure we're meeting athletics demand and student demands, and then when we go from there, we figure out
Got
what
it.
else to use it.
Well, the football field certainly has become like the lacrosse field. The high school kids all over Long Island, look forward to playing at Stony Brook and the championship games, and so.
Yeah, no, and we.
I think it's good for the marketing and the branding of the school.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and we'll continue to do that. West Apartment Building, there's a construction contract, so we're going to do a $29 million project to add 172 additional beds to our housing. So this is a continued effort on our part to provide housing for our graduate students and undergraduates, and so we're adding this inventory to it. We've done phase one of expanding the stadium, so if you come to commencement, you'll see in the end zone, in the end zone where there were no stands before, there's now concrete poured for bleachers to go up in that area. There will also be a concession stand and restrooms built there as well, but we haven't laid the foundation for that. But that'll add about 1,800 seats to the stadium, which increases it to a little over 10,000.
Cool.
And then we're upgrading Central Plant. There's about $75 million that we've invested in upgrading our central plants to provide heating and cooling for all the major buildings on East and West Campus. That's ongoing. And then we're in the midst of a $62 million project to replace all of our electric transmission lines on West Campus as well as East Campus, and a new switching station on East Campus as well. This schedule to be completed. So all of this is to tell you that we continue to try and keep our infrastructure intact. It's incredibly expensive to maintain this facility, but it's very important, obviously, for safety reasons and to keep it habitable that we do these projects. Judy will talk about, we had a small increase in capital this year that's very important for us to continue that, but it is a major investment. But it also keeps people employed. So many of these projects are employing people on Long Island. We're creating jobs essentially for this region by the magnitude of the kind of construction and so on we're doing. And it's a great symbiotic relationship. We want to be able to continue to do this. We want to be able to continue to expand and improve our facilities. We have to if we're going to be competitive. And at the same time, as I said, it certainly benefits the region from the economic impact.
Really,
Yeah,
you just
so-
listed, rattled off about $750 million worth of construction projects, and the multiplier effect of that, throughout the region,
Amazing.
both in temporary and permanent jobs, is really amazing.
Yeah, I think when
In
we
addition
were,
to enhancing the overall, environment here for the student and faculty, so I
Thank
think
you.
it's a great investment.
Thank you, appreciate that.
That's exciting. All good stuff.
Okay, so I'll stop here and answer additional questions. So I know there's a Newsday story that relates to the budget, and Judy, when we talk about the budget, we'll fold that in and give you a response on that.
Got it. Any questions for Sam on any of the things that he briefed us on?
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
So with the Far and Beyond campaign and just everything that's been going on and so exciting at the university, did we see a rise in applications to the university? Did we accept more kids than we normally do?
So I don't know the exact details, but Matt, do you know application numbers?
So yeah, we reached almost 36,000 applications this year. I believe that's a record high.
Wow.
The quality of those applicants has increased. Part of that is based on the new SAT, which has seen some increases, but part of it is just stronger applicants applying. We're seeing more New York students. We're seeing more African American students, so our diversity numbers look good. One of the threats we have is our international students are a little weak based on a lot of things that are going on, both nationally and internationally. And Sam is right. As of this morning, our New York State residents look like they ticked up a little bit, likely based on some Excelsior work. So things look very strong right now for many people. We just have to be able to work with the provost office and make sure we can deliver the students the educational experience that will keep them here and graduate in 4 years. One of Sam's priorities for students.
And that's a really good point, and I'm glad you asked that question, Linda, because I think one of the challenges we have is that I do believe that one thing Excelsior will do is elevate the quality of the New York State students. So I think we're going to see that more good students essentially are going to choose to come to Stony Brook. We've been accepting them, but more of them are going to yield and choose to come to Stony Brook. But the other thing that Excelsior does, if you whether you like it or not, is it's a very powerful completion agenda. So it's basically forcing, so I know, you've read the editorials, David Brooks, New York Times, there's a lot of ways you could have decided to develop a program like this, but, the governor was pretty clear in saying this is about completing college too. This is about, saving money and completing college in 4 years. So yes, you can go for free, but you've got to finish in 4 years. And so, that's, as I say, that's tough. And, there are hardship, things that are looked at in terms of, after you graduate, the 4-year thing. If you can't find a job in New York, you're allowed to, go out of state. So there's things that are built in, so it's not maybe quite as draconian as I present it. But, it is designed to be a completion agenda. I mean, it's part of a completion agenda for students. So, whether, how realistic it is for every student is going to be a challenge, but it's a completion agenda, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be, some tweaks along the way.
Yeah.
But maybe by the fall meeting, Matt, I think you typically do that in our fall meeting
Yeah.
anyway. You give us sort of an enrollment update.
I was just curious only
Right.
because it's top of mind. I just went through this process myself, but the advertising, I've seen it a lot. So it was even more about more than Excelsior, more about we've got a lot of exciting stuff going on this campus. I'm hoping it's translating into
and so
quality
it's a
applicants.
great. So thank you. For commenting on it. I mean, we're working now to figure out kind of the next phase. So the first phase was kind of to acquaint the university, to really raise internal understanding of the campaign, and that's why all the signs you see around the campus get people to buy it. We're just early on in the second phase, which is to really start pushing it out. But I think we're developing some partnerships that'll help us really get that message out, and really both. I think the thing now is to understand how to take that broad thing of Far Beyond, then segment it to the individual audiences. So what does Far Beyond look like for recruiting students? What does Far Beyond look like for influencing guidance counselors? What does Far Beyond look like to reach out to alumni and donors, and kind of developing that messaging around those individual buckets? And that's what we're spending time. We spent a lot of time the past few days just going through the campaign and figuring out where we go next. But the idea is, just as you said, one of the outcomes we're looking at is more applications and better yield and better students. But we also now, I think, need to focus internationally as well, which is a category we didn't need to focus on so much before. We had such great international applicants, and so many of them, and now with what's been happening in the States in terms of immigration, plus general trends in the countries as well, as the quality of schools in China and other places increases, the competition becomes more intense. So I think we're going to have to do some marketing overseas, which we haven't done before, and we're actually setting up a China center on campus designed to help us recruit better among students, overseas international students, particularly in China. So we're trying to respond to that too.
Great.
And Sam, if I can just offer one correction, if we include our transfer students, we're actually over 40,000 applications.
That's great.
40.
Wow.
It's exciting.
Yeah. It's amazing. That's great.
Okay.
We'll say a great report. Sam, I have one question.
Yeah.
I don't see Sean around, so if you don't know the answer, then maybe you can reach out to him and get back to me. But I was walking my dog the other day, saw a neighbor, and he was telling me that both his sons committed to Hofstra, and they're in 9th and 10th grade because they're committing to it because of lacrosse. And part of me thought, wow, that's sort of weird that, what 15, 16-year-old boys know what they want to do.
Starting
But
very early.
then I was thinking, if we're not doing that, then maybe we're not competing. And are we allowed to do that? And do we do that? And do we get commitments from kids in 9th and 10th grade now in our sports?
Yeah, I don't know the specifics, but my guess is it certainly is allowed by NCAA rules.
Yes.
That's what I was
So you
thinking.
are allowed to commit 8th, 9th graders.
8th grade too?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Maryland's
So,
just got a lot of
yeah,
flack for
and
committing
it's
late.
and this is a really complicated issue, and the NCAA is looking at it and trying to understand it. We talked about it briefly at the last NCAA board meeting, and the challenge really is coming from the AAU, not the Association of American Universities, but the American Athletic, whatever it's called. They, those sports have basically taken sports out of high schools. So where it used to be that the best athletes played in high school, and education was tied to sports, right? So sports was associated with education. The AAUs basically pull it out, and they're exciting, it's fun, you play at a high level of competition, you travel around the state, sometimes around the world for people who are playing soccer and so on. So I'm not saying there's not exciting benefits for families, but what it's done is it's really changed the level of sports. So now that you have students who may not even play high school sports, and so it's created this whole environment now where the coaches are reaching to the AAU teams. They're finding partnership with the AAU coaches, and then they're trying to get younger and younger commitments from students. In lacrosse, it's one of those sports, again, where I think they can see talent earlier, generally, and I think they're very comfortable doing this. And of course, the problem is, what 8th grader, even with their parents really, or 9th grader really has, the emotional intelligence, I think, to make a decision about where to go to college.
Right.
So I find it very problematic. But right now, the NCAA, has not stopped people from doing that.
AAU basketball teams are huge. It's
Yeah.
more important to make the AAU team than it is to
Oh,
make the
yeah,
school
and it's the
team.
same in soccer and
Elite.
lacrosse
Yeah.
and,
Right.
all these things. I mean, they dominate the sports. I just remember at Ward Melville, there were athletes who, didn't play on Ward Melville's team because they didn't want to, they interfered with their AAU play.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So, yeah. But it would be good to have Sean talk about that at another meeting, then we
Got
can
it.
talk about the
Yeah, I was just
challenges around
curious
recruiting.
because I was surprised.
Yeah.
All right, Sam, a great report. Thanks.
Thanks, Sam.
We'll continue with a budget update from Judy Griman. Judy?
Thanks. So I'm just gonna do a couple of slides of the highlights overall of the budget, give you some stuff on what happened in SUNY and then how's it playing out here. So just a few highlights, I won't read all these, but one of the big issues for the governor and for the speaker was to raise the age, which was raising the age of adult criminal responsibility from 16 to 18 years. That was sort of a key factor at the end of the session. No budget was going to get passed unless there was some raise the age component of the budget. Free college, obviously, for certain SUNY and CUNY state residents. There was an increase in K-12 aid, ride hailing, hopefully soon get Uber on Long Island. That was another big sort of piece hanging out at the end. Clean water infrastructure improvements, and much of that is slated for Long Island. There's a phase-in of a middle-class tax cut, which will be $700 when fully implemented. So when you look at each of these, I think that each of the leaders, had some significant wins. The governor really held out for and achieved most of his key proposals. If we look back at the beginning, I'd sort of do a thing when the governor first puts out his budget. He got most of what he had put out. The speaker held out for the raise the age, and he certainly got that. And Senator Flanagan looked for workers' comp reform, minimal fee and tax increases, a middle-class tax cut. So each one of them got something. In the overall budget. Why isn't this? There we go. Some of the other highlights, which particularly impact Long Island, an expanded infrastructure program that includes LIRR funding, includes the MacArthur Airport connection, a station at BNL, some changes in road access to JFK, which should help people on Long Island. Probably will be difficult while they're building all of this. There is the clean water infrastructure increase. There's additional funding for an REDC round 7 funding. There's $70 million for an I Love New York statewide promotion, and I call that to your attention only because one of the new commercials for the I Love New York statewide promotion is on the Excelsior program, and you will notice all of the scenes for the generic university were shot here. So last week, the film crews were here shooting that commercial, and it won't say Stony Brook University, but you'll recognize every single aspect of that commercial.
Have those started airing already?
No, they just shot them
Okay.
last week, so
Okay.
I'm not sure when they'll start airing.
Okay.
There's workers' comp reform, and then there's this little piece at the bottom here, which is the Federal Response Authority was given to the governor in the case of major cuts, because there wasn't a federal budget at the time that our state budget was passed, and there was certainly indications that there could be major cuts. There was sort of an unprecedented transfer of authority to the governor for 2017 and 18, that if there were federal cuts over $815 million in Medicaid and other general cuts, that the governor would have the right to cut the state budget. Highly unusual transfer of that power, wouldn't need legislative approval. I'll go into a little bit, but we now have we're on the road to, in the next probably couple days, getting a federal budget that takes us at least till October, where I don't think this clause will be in play, but it could be in play over 2017 and 18. So what are some things that did not happen that you might have heard a lot about? What we call mandated tithing by the SUNY and CUNY affiliated entities like foundations and other nonprofits that are affiliated with the universities. There was a push actually by Governor Cuomo to have funds taken from the foundations to support financial aid or EOP programs or other things within the state budget. That did not happen, and there was a significant work against it by SUNY, by the university centers, by the foundations. Foundations are separate 501c3 organizations. There were some significant legal and other issues in terms of taking that money. That did not happen. There was a proposal to cap dish payments, which Ken will talk about next. The proposal would have put in legislation a cut that they're trying to make, so that while we're still under negotiation on our dish payment, at least there's no legislative ceiling on that. We worked very hard in concert with upstate, downstate, and also with SUNY. The DREAM Act did not pass. The governor is a big supporter. We have students on our campus who are key voices in advocating for the DREAM Act. That did not pass this year. Ethics reforms for elected officials, there was big noise about that at the beginning of the session. Nothing came about. It could still happen in the next month and a half. I don't expect that it will. Some other collection on sales tax for online purchases. This is kind of a national effort that states have been trying to do. New York did not pass that. SUNY funding. So we did get the $200 tuition increase in each of the authority, the ability to have a $200 tuition increase in each of the next 4 years. This is not a given. The legislation allows SUNY to take that vote. I've actually already heard the chancellor saying, well, maybe it won't be needed in each year. It is needed certainly at the U Center level, but we at least have the authority for predictable tuition increases over the next 4
But
years.
it's up to SUNY, not to the individual universities?
Correct. There's no new operational money, so there was no increase to our base. There is the reinstatement of the MOE requirement. This was a part of SUNY 2020. Sam mentioned it before, that says we cannot be cut, and it specifically includes the Excelsior funding. It does not include the negotiated salary increases. So that is something that over the last, I think we're in the 3rd year now, it's about $8 million a year, so we are not getting paid as we had in the past for mandated salary increases. They're currently under negotiation for new contracts, and so given the way this budget came out, we would not get paid for them, at least in the upcoming fiscal year. Extension of the TAP gap tuition credit, as we've said, we're still paying the gap for the 2020 increases. Almost $400 million in capital funds for the system, which is very positive, and I'll get into a little bit. An additional round of competitive funding for projects, special projects at $55 million. This would be the 7th round of that. And $208 million for SUNY Poly. If Bob were here, I would give him a little, nudge. We would have liked that here, but it really is for, in Bob's words, contracts to partner companies. So I think as they're trying to unwind and figure out all of the elements of SUNY Poly and how to make that all work going forward, this $208 million was needed. From our budget, obviously we will get revenue from, let's assume that tuition increase happens, we will get revenue from that tuition increase, although a chunk of our students will not be providing tuition increases. So again, if you're in Excelsior, we will get revenue from the Excelsior program. Most of our programs that we watch have been level funded, EOP, Centers of Excellence. Stony Brook Hospital, there's generally sort of a dance that goes on between the governor and the legislature. He generally proposes a budget that's $18.6 million short of funding for the hospitals, and the legislature generally puts it back. Only one house put it back this year. So it's $9.6 million overall, and what about 3 is of that would have been going to Stony Brook. The proposed dish cut is still under negotiation, and Ken will get into that. Again, no new operating funds. There's an expectation of probably another, again, they're at the bargaining table right now. Could be another 2%. There may be some retro payment on that. So those are happening. And certainly the freeze in the Excelsior Fund tuition for 4 years does impact overall the revenue that will be available for the institution. From a capital perspective, we did pretty well given their constraints of the state budget. So our critical maintenance went up. It was about $27 million. It went up to $35 million. Stony Brook actually gets the largest portion of critical maintenance that goes directly to the institutions. We got the Southampton reappropriation. So last year we found, I think it was about $7 million last year that had been just sort of hanging out in an appropriation that was never going to happen, and we asked for the legislature to reappropriate that to Southampton. Got that this year. We identified another pot of money, so there will never be a tram running around this campus, but there will be enhanced academic classroom. I'm sorry, Karen. There will be enhanced academic classrooms at Southampton. So that was a big win. BNL got $15 million for cryo-EM, and the other important part is the second one, which is access to a portion of SUNY capital funds. They've got 2 tranches, really, $100 million for critical maintenance and some new construction, $300 million for high-priority critical maintenance and some new construction. It's not yet clear how those pots are being distributed. Bob is working closely with SUNY. We hope that we can use some of those to do some what I'll call sort of creative things in how we manage some of our large restoration projects that we need, like our chemistry building. Perhaps we can get some money for planning for a new engineering building. So we've got a couple of good asks for that money, and I think that we're working closely with SUNY to make that happen. We certainly held on to the IDIME funding, and let's hope we can get that in May. The session's not over, so that was just the budget part of the session. There clearly are a few other things that could come our way that we're watching very closely. One is the Comptroller Procurement Act. So I think it was in 2011 that we were originally exempted from pre-approvals by the Comptroller for our contracts for goods and services. the comptroller is suggesting that we repeal that. It has been significant in that when, in the old days, there was a significant delay when we needed to purchase commodities, scientific equipment, other things for research needs. This way we get to purchase when we need to purchase, and then there's sort of a post-purchase look at contracts. He's trying to change that, so that's something we're working hard on. FOIL expansion to SUNY foundations. We would expand the Freedom of Information laws to include SUNY RF and campus foundations. This has kicked around the last few years. It would really treat these foundations differently than every other 501c3. I think it's unlikely to pass, but it's still there. Financial disclosure bill, which would require, again, the employees of the foundations to be subject to certain rules that are really state employee rules. So again, treating those foundations radically different than every other 501c3. And then the last is sort of an interesting bill. It requires that 100% of critical maintenance needs be funded, which sounds great, but unlikely. And if they're not funded, that there would need to be a capital plan, a 5-year capital plan that would sort of show how those would get done. If it passes, my expectation is it would be vetoed, and the governor would say, and I put additional money into SUNY's budget for capital. So, I think we'll see that dance, but just these are a few of the things that are still hanging out there.
Hey Judy, on the first three, I would, in the climate we're in, I'd be careful about just being opposed to them and spend your time educating the decision makers about all the negative ramifications of the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they sound good, and transparent, and increase in transparency. But I know they all have very negative impacts and significant impacts to our operation, so.
And some of, certainly some of what we're doing is actually explaining what transparency already exists, and there's a significant amount.
Right.
So.
Good.
Thank you, good point.
Yes, so it's an interesting time for us, and what we've had in this budget, I think, is some resolution for issues that have been undecided over the past couple of years. So, as you know, SUNY 2020 expired, and last year we had no increase in tuition, no increase in state allocation, no knowledge of what our numbers were going to be going forward. And the resolution this year, I think, is not, to be honest, not all we would have hoped for. I think the increase in tuition is relatively low. We were getting $300 a year under SUNY 2020, so it's reduced by 33% to $200 a year. Excelsior means that there's a subsegment of the population that could be fairly significant that aren't going to be paying that increased tuition for at least 4 years. So that's, while not a cut to our budget, is not an increase in addition. And yet at the same time, as we've done now, as Judy said, for the past 3 or 4 years, we have pay raises that were completely deserved for our employees, but are not covered in the state allocation budget. And that really represents a shift. Most of the time in the past they've been covered. There probably had been a few exceptions over the years, but most of the time when those pay raises were done, they were in the increased state allocation, and now that hasn't happened. So while it's nice to have some resolution of these issues, and now we know kind of what our revenue is going to look like going forward, it's interesting to try and run. Obviously, the university is not a business, and yet we have to keep track of revenue and expenditures like a business does. And so it's nice to kind of know what our revenue is going to be. It's not as much as we want in terms of at least the issues around tuition and state allocation. There's opportunities to grow revenue in other areas, and that's why we're making investments in advancement and in fundraising. It's why we're trying to grow our research to grow the indirect costs, even though research does cost us money as well. The indirect funds that come from research, that come from federal sponsors, is helpful to us. So I think we're at a stage now where we know where we are going forward. We had a real opportunity under SUNY 2020 to hire. So at the time when we had the growth from SUNY 2020, we used it. We had a time to hire faculty, and it was actually a really good time to hire faculty because other universities around the country were cutting back during 2010. There was still fallout from the recession, and so people were not hiring so much. So we've hired some new faculty with the revenue we got through SUNY 2020. But we always knew when we did that hiring that we wouldn't have enough funds in the immediate years to cover all the costs of the startup packages for people we hired in that. So that was something we took for granted. But the anticipation was that at least something comparable to SUNY 2020 would continue, and that would allow you then to have the revenue. Because startup packages you don't need to deliver right away, they can be delivered over a year period, so we figured we'd have that. So when we had these freezes in revenue, it created a situation for us where we've had some areas of the university have actually been using their reserves. So they've been spending from reserves basically to meet their current budgetary needs. So that needs to stop. They've ended up accumulating some deficit now, and so as we look at the status of the university overall, there's units that are in deficit, there's other units that aren't in deficit in the university. So overall for the university as a whole, it's a pretty small percentage of our gross annual budget. So if you just take West Campus, for example, I'm going to stay out of East Campus, the behemoth over there for a second, but if you just take West Campus, let's say a roughly $800 million spend, it's a relatively small percentage of deficit for the university, but it's one that we can't continue to maintain. And now that we know where our spending is, I think we're in a better position to anticipate what our costs are going to be and our revenues are going to be, and actually make some changes. That's tough to do. We've been really working to keep administrative costs low, and that's been our Project 54, which has been taking out on average about $10 to $12 million in savings out of our budget on an annual basis through procurement, through automating some things that required people, through attrition in hiring in particular areas. We've been doing that. We continue to push in that area. But I think we've reached a kind of a inflection point where we have to do more. And so there's been a really intense review going on of the budget this year. So each of the vice presidents have been presenting detailed budgets to a committee of senior leaders of the university. They've been talking about what their plans are to deal with potential cuts in their areas, so how they would handle potential cuts in their areas, as well as areas where they think there still should be investment. Because one thing I want to make clear is whatever remedies we have, some of the remedies will actually involve continued investment in areas where we think there's return on investment and where we think we need to continue to invest to be excellent as an institution. I don't want to see areas of excellence throughout the university fall because we're in a tight budgetary. So there's intense program review going on the administrative and the academic side. And as a result of that, there's discussion now about potentially closing some programs, closing some of the things we did. Talked already when I first came years ago, we repurposed the Southampton campus to do things. We've talked about Stony Brook, Manhattan. So we've done in the past, we've had programs closing. We've had a program close over at a graduate program close over at the East Campus. That's happened. And so I know many of you read in Newsday something about theater arts potentially stopping new student enrollment. These are the kind of discussions we're having around the campus. So there will be more kinds of discussions like this, and people should be prepared for them. Michael, do you want to talk about the process in the provost's office and the meeting just very quickly?
Well, I just mentioned, as Sam said, Provost's office is working with all of the West Campus units on an intensive review of budgets and of the academic programs, and we've been closely working with what we call CAPRA, the Committee on Academic Programs and Resource Allocation, which is the University Senate Committee. In the articles that appeared over the weekend, in arts and sciences, our largest academic unit by far on the West Campus, we've been looking at some programs and trying to ask some hard-headed questions about the future of those programs. We haven't made any final decisions yet. If any programs are suspended, meaning if we do not take new students into those major programs, we would certainly teach out the students that are in those programs so that they can complete their degrees. That's a rock solid commitment, no matter what decisions are made. But we are trying to look very closely at how we best utilize scarce resources for the sake of the university. And as Sam said, we want to make sure that the very strong programs that identify Stony Brook as the unique, university center that it is in the State University of New York system, want to make sure that those programs are not weakened or enervated by current budget pressures. So that's why we're going through this strategic planning exercise right now.
It's amazing.
Can
We talk.
I ask a question?
Yeah.
So the theater arts article, which we saw this morning, which was kind of surprising because I thought that this body would have to rule on that.
No, not at all.
We don't get a
It's
vote
an
in a
academic
change
program.
of an academic program?
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I just think
programs,
optic. I think
academic programs are faculty and at the provost dean level. They're dealt with by the council.
We don't get any input into that at all.
You certainly can have input, but
Right.
decision-making is purely at the academic level.
So Sam, how does that differ then from the Southampton issue? Got a hold of, what did we,
That was considered a campus essentially, so the campus, it fell under SUNY. It really has to do almost, it has to do with the program, but also the buildings and the locale and so on, but that's considered a campus, so it's very different.
That was analogous to Manhattan.
Got it.
Yeah, yeah.
I just think optically, cutting these programs while we're doing some other things, and I know that they're separate budgets, completely separate budgets, and funding sources come from different places. But I think when we cut an academic program and then we add 5,000 seats to a stadium that's rarely filled, I don't know how that looks. I think most of the community wouldn't, outside of the community wouldn't care, but I think on campus, I think that would probably be an issue for a lot of people.
So again, I think, just as you said, different budgets, the capital allocation provided by the legislature essentially for the university. So
It's
a
the
different set of-
difference between reality and perception, which unfortunately we live in perception now.
Yep, and I think again, it's incumbent upon us to make clear what we're doing. But I think, at the end of the day, we talk a lot about, and it's amazing how everybody agrees that Stony Brook to be an outstanding university, we're not going to have the ability to provide everything for everybody. It just can't be done.
Right.
University out of Harvard is cutting their budget in graduate school by 4% across the board. So they're going to reduce graduate programs 4% across the board. So that means there's programs that are going to be decreased or closed at Harvard. So all universities are under this kind of pressure. So at the end of the day, you have to ask questions about where's enrollment, where's demand from students, where's quality in terms of the faculty and the scholarship. We're a research university, so we expect scholarship. And what are ones where other people may do it better than we do? So if you look around the region, other people who have programs that
Right.
typically by ranking and so on are superior to ours. So those are the kind of criteria that you think about as you go through. So none of these decisions are easy. But if a university doesn't evolve, doesn't change, we can't continue to do everything. We don't have, we don't do Latin anymore at Stony Brook because times have changed. There's not a demand for it. So you have to kind of look, and every program has something, I think, to, in its favor. It's why it was created to begin with. So it's not as though we're diminishing the concept of what's being taught, but rather, is it right for Stony Brook to be teaching it? Do we have the resources to do it and do it well? That's really important to me. Do we have the resources to do it well? So those are the kind of things we consider. And so, as we say, the discussions are going, multiple programs are under review, and again, multiple things we're doing administratively are under review as well. So this is not just about the academic areas. In the past, we've really made the commitment to try and preserve academic programs, and generally we've been pretty good at it. But this time around, arts and sciences in particular, based on declining enrollment. So the enrollment in arts and sciences has been declining, is under fiscal pressure.
I'm not questioning the decision.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have excellent reasons. But I just think optically it's.
Well, I think one of the challenges you have is that you can have a discussion with somebody about something.
Right.
So and it's a discussion,
Yeah.
and then the next thing you know, they're on the phone calling Newsday or
Yeah.
calling in. So that turns a discussion into a public thing. So
Been
that's
part of many of those.
That's exactly. So, and that's not something we can easily control. So we're trying to go through a process. We're trying to engage people, talk to the department chairs, understand what the issues are. As Michael said, respect shared governance. Talk to CAPRA about it, so the faculty leadership understand what's going on and what we're trying to do. And I think we've been pretty upfront about the budget problems that we face right now. I think Stony Brook is going to remain strong. I'm very confident in our future, but I think if we don't take these kind of actions, then we run the risk of weakening some of our core programs. So, as you look around the country, I've seen places where programs have come, then they've gone, then they've come back again when demand does it. So there's always an evolution around the university, and nothing is permanent. But again, doing it and doing it well is a high criteria for me. So
it said, contrary to the Newsday article, no final decisions are made. You guys you're evaluating and you're in discussions, but and it's more than just a fine arts department. You're looking at several different programs.
Absolutely.
But it's not the whole fine arts department.
No.
It's just theater arts. It's like a major, right?
It's just the major in theater arts, which had, I think, 40 students, I believe, were major. 45 were major. So remember, it's, so there's, 18,000, roughly undergraduates at Stony, 17,000, roughly 75 at Stony Brook. So you have a major that has 35 individuals, 17 faculty or something, adjuncts and so on. So,
17 faculty.
counting adjuncts and,
Yeah.
whatever. So you're just, again, there's national trends, that are not unique to Stony Brook that drive some of this discussion. Yes, Ed?
Sam, can you talk a little bit about the actions of the Board of Trustees around this $200 increase? Will they make this increase if they approve it across the board for all SUNY campuses? Or could they say it's up to the
Let the
individual
record reflect
campus
Jim Morgo's leave.
to
Yeah.
choose?
I'm sorry, it's an emergency, but
Is
there's
it-
no sensitivity.
Is this something I said, Jim?
Yeah, stop it.
No, I think, my guess is they do have the ability, if they want, to make it at some campuses and not other campuses. I think that's well within their authority, I think, to do that. Whether they want to do that or not is another question. The amount is relatively modest, but again, there are campuses that have not wanted to do a tuition increase, but maybe Excelsior.
Because of their perceived.
But maybe Excelsior takes that out of the equation for them. So my guess would be that Excelsior might take it out of the equation because it's not going to diminish their access to Excelsior students because it's not going to increase there. So to me, they might be less likely to want to oppose an across-the-board tuition increase because again, it won't impact them as much for the students they're competing with private universities for. So, and I think we definitely do need that increase, although again, its impact on our bottom line is relatively modest, so.
Carol?
I have a question about the access to the university. With all the growth, all the new buildings, all the additional, possibly additional students, what kind of leverage has been put on the New York State and all the local governments to try to improve the access to the university? Getting to and from campus has become more and more difficult with traffic jams, and is there anything the university is doing to try to leverage that position?
So, I'd love to have Kevin's comments on this too. I mean, I think the transportation challenges of Stony Brook, also are part of the transportation challenges that Long Island faces as a whole. And I know that Steve Ballone has had some ideas about how one might improve some of the rapid transportation on Nichols Road, which can be a clogged area, particularly around the time the medical center is emptying out and people are coming to work in the morning. So express buses, essentially overpasses. I mean, there's lots of things being discussed, I think, that would be helpful. I think the third track would be helpful in terms of improving railroad access, essentially, and making the trains run better. I think, we are major users of the Long Island Railroad, and I think that's a possibility. Around the campus itself, I mean, I think we still want to try and find ways to, encourage people to carpool, to use public transportation when possible, and I think we may want to try and find more financial ways to incentivize that. We'll be talking about parking, so there's ways in which we might try and improve or relocate some of the parking too. So, but I don't have anything beyond that to talk about, Jeff.
No, I think.
Is there an access road plan to go through the Jardine property?
So we're looking at that. We've thought about doing a road that might run from Circle Road that would run to the entrance to the R&D park. And so that would take some traffic away from some of those intersections and be safer, we think, for students who are trying to access the R&D park. So we have talked about that, but we actually have to get funding to put that together. So we'd have to look at whether that would not be an inexpensive project to do.
There is a trail through the woods that goes to the.
Yes, I'm sure you know that.
I've run on it. Yeah, I ran on it yesterday.
People
Actually,
found that. People found that. But I think the question could be what would it cost us to do a road? If we did it, then we would probably tie it into fiber and other things that may be needed for that thing too.
How
But
about through
we've
the
got to get
R&D
funds for
park?
it.
Anything through that you could go through the R&D park over to like Mills Pond Road or?
Yeah, we haven't looked at
East?
that. I mean, there's railroad.
Maybe
There's a
west.
railroad crossing, right, as
Yeah,
part of
there's a
that, so
railroad
that
crossing.
complicates things. But we'd have to look at that. So I'm not sure.
And then you're dealing with another town.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that line,
Yeah.
line.
It's a Smith Town Brook more.
Yeah. So, anything else to add on this? I mean, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
The only other thing I want to add on Judy's report is I was very involved with my counterparts in New York City and Westchester lobbying for the $650 million for the life sciences initiatives, and I really
Yeah.
think Stony Brook can capitalize on that fund I mean, Westchester's the biggest, and it's nothing to dismiss, you know, Regeneron, it's a company we'd
Yeah.
love to have here on Long Island, it's
Yeah.
a big player up there and continuing to grow. New York City is, credit Mayor Bloomberg, who started it and laid the foundation for it in terms of all the technology companies now, the life sciences companies that want to be there, including Johnson's, who just did Johnson just did the J-Lab facility, doing that. But we being Long Island and Stony Brook, I think, can be tapping this as well, and so I would encourage your
It's
biotech, cat,
definitely on our
We
radar.
already have,
COEs.
we already have faculty and.
Definitely on our radar.
I'm sure you'll have a fifth building or something.
Thank you, no,
right,
but thank you
right.
for advocating for that. I think it's incredibly important, and, you know, we've talked before about what we envision as a corridor, essentially a research corridor that extends from, you know, Westchester, New York City, and out to Long Island, all the way to Brookhaven National Laboratory, and that really is very much our goal.
Right,
So
it's
I
not
think
just
that's
on Long
consistent
Island.
with this, right.
I think the governor views the research corridor from B&L to Midtown Manhattan,
Yeah.
and then taking a
To the
little
Genome
jaunt
Center,
north,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
Can I just add one
Sure.
sentence really on so the federal budget, there's been great concern as to what some of the cuts might be, particularly around research funding, and if, you know, overnight, I think there was some agreement at the federal level. And a quick look, this morning, most of the aid programs were frozen, including all of the ones that the president sort of put on the chopping block in his skinny budget. Pell received an increase, and equally as important, the research side of the budget prioritizes medical research, public health, and biodefense. And so there are increases to NIH institutes and centers. I haven't seen the NSF yet, but this is through October. It's not a,
Yeah.
you know, but at least it doesn't, it's a bipartisan agreement, and it doesn't have some of the draconian cuts that I think people were fearing.
I think when I was in Washington, you know, talking to my colleagues, and then getting the pulse of the House and the Senate, it was really clear that the president's budget was out of touch, essentially, with their views on issues around basic research and medical research both. It's interesting, there's more issues around applied research, at least for some of the folks, but when it comes to medical research, where people's health is at stake, and when it comes to basic research, they believe that those should be funded, universities should be funded, the agencies should be supported to do it. So it's nice to see that play out in this vote. So.
but I think the fight will continue.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
It's a short-term win right now.
Yeah, no, you're right, till
something-
September.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. All right, Judy, good job, thank you. We'll move on, we'll have an update from Dr. Ken Kuchansky, DSH.
Thanks, Kevin. So, Sam had asked me to brief the council on a couple of looming threats that face, as Sam called us, the behemoth on the East Campus. So what I want to go through is to first discuss with you the School of Medicine, because although this applies specifically to the hospital support, I want to prove to you that there's a huge ramification for academics in the medical school. Then go through the hospital budget, such as it is, and then explain what DISH is and why we are so dependent on it. So here's the School of Medicine budget, and I'll go through it very briefly and just highlight a couple of things. So $55 million to the $682 million School of Medicine budget comes from the state. Now that includes our tuition allocation, which is about $22 million. And so in essence, there is about $33 million that comes from the state of New York to run a faculty of 900 medical school faculty, the research that's done, and all of the training of 500 medical students, the training of 500 residents. So about $33 million. $76 million this particular year came in through research grants and contracts. That's one of our main sources of revenue, but it's also one of our main missions. And very important number, $120 million was transferred from University Hospital to the School of Medicine to support directorships, to support new innovative programs, to support a number of the things that are critical in the School of Medicine. And so almost 20% of the School of Medicine budget comes from University Hospital. And my point is that the health of University Hospital is directly related to the health of the School of Medicine. $24 million in philanthropy, thank you to Dexter and his crew. And another very big and important number, $380 million, comes in to the School of Medicine from the clinical enterprise. All of the patients that we see and are billed for their services, $380 million. So in essence, it's $682 million. We spent $677 of it, and we have a little bit of money at the end of the year. We have been growing in the School of Medicine. Sam referred to it through the SUNY 2020 mechanism. You can see in red on the lower line, the number of research faculty have been growing, the number of clinical faculty have been growing, and now we're over 900 faculty members in the School of Medicine. That does not count our voluntary clinical faculty, people in the community who are part of our voluntary faculty. Overall, over the last 5 or 6 years, about a 22% increase. Now, as you know, SUNY 2020 has fueled increased amounts of dollars coming into the entire university campus, and about a 15% increase in the School of Medicine budget to account for that 22% increase in our faculty. Okay, what about the hospital? Because this is the crux of the presentation. So we are a very, very busy hospital. 37,000 inpatient stays and about 9,000 1- and 2-day observation admissions. 4,100 new Long Islanders every year. 110,000 emergency department visits. More than 24,000 surgeries, either outpatient or inpatient operations. A lot of visits to our physicians. 280,000 imaging studies, 6 million laboratory studies, a lot of great doctors, and 6,200 employees in University Hospital.
That's an ad in the New York Times right there.
And
I like that.
That's one of the nicest photographs you'll ever see of University Hospital.
Very good.
This is a partial list of what I like to call the Stony Brook onlys, only in Suffolk County or only on Long Island, the only level 1 trauma center for kids and adults, only burn unit, only stem cell kidney transplant programs, only accredited heart failure programs, on and on. And so the point is that we really are a vital component to the health of Suffolk County residents. Now, occasionally something nice comes along. This is just an advertisement. They teach you in Dean School, you're the cheerleader. Health grades based on outcomes from the 5,000 hospitals in the United States. Looks at their top 5% hospitals across the nation. There's 258 such hospitals in the United States, 10 hospitals or hospital systems in the state of New York, and we were viewed as one of the top 5% hospitals in the country. Okay, here's where DISH comes in. Here is where our challenge lies, is in our serving for the underserved. This is a core mission for Stony Brook Medicine, an absolutely core mission. And we provide about $120 million a year of care for the Medicaid population and for uninsured patients that we do not get in collections on professional fees, on bills, and the like. And it's about 80% on Medicaid patients and about 20% on patients who have absolutely no insurance.
That's inpatient and outpatient?
That's inpatient and outpatient. The number of patients with Medicaid or patients who have no insurance whatsoever would more than fill the Rose Bowl. We took care of about 140,000 patients who were on Medicaid or who had no ability to pay through insurance at all last year. A lot of people. UCLA didn't win that game, unfortunately. Here's the hospital budget. The blue bars are our revenue over the last several years. The red bar are our expenses over the last several years. And fortunately, showing those bold numbers, we have had a little bit more revenue than expenses each of the last several years. This year, we were targeting about a $4 million revenue excess over expenses.
And the left side actually is, so that's 1.3 billion.
Yeah, so
Right,
it's a
so
total
it's not
about
1.3 million, so there's thousands are missing there, so it's 1.3 billion.
Thank you. So that's why we got labeled the email. So you can't see these numbers. I'll go through them very briefly because they're important. Medicare, $330 million of Medicare. but we actually lose money taking care of Medicare patients. Medicare pays us about 77 cents on the dollar of expenses to take care of Medicare. $480 million in patients who have regular commercial health care insurance, and they pay us above our expenses, and so this sort of cancels each other out.
Hey Ken, the first point you made, there are some people who have both Medicare and Medicaid, senior citizens. So for the seniors who get the Medicare, that picks up 77%. Then they don't have any other type of insurance, and we're taking a hit on that. And for the seniors who get Medicare but then have a Plan B or some subsequent insurance,
It helps.
it helps.
Medicaid pays even less. Medicaid pays us about 67 cents on the expense dollar, and that's where a big chunk of that $120 million shortfall comes, is all of the Medicaid patients we take care of at University Hospital and in our practices at 67 cents on the dollar. I'm going to talk about disproportionate share hospital dollars in a moment, but it compensates for that 33 cents on the dollar we lose, and it compensates for the underserved patients, the patients with no insurance that we care for. This is what Judy was referring to, the dance that happens every year. We spend about $70 million more on benefits for our state employees, and the state gives us back about $30 to $40 million of it, and so we start the year about $30 to $40 million short. This year we're going to be about $31 million short on benefits. And then finally that $120 million that goes from the hospital over to the school. Okay, so what are DSH dollars, disproportionate share dollars? So public safety net hospitals who care for fiscally challenged members of our society. Half of DSH comes from the state of New York, and half of DSH comes from the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services from the feds. Stony Brook in Suffolk County, Newmark in Nassau County are the two largest healthcare providers of underserved patients on Long Island, without question, by a long shot.
And it's part of our mission.
It is absolutely
Whereas
interwoven into
the
our
private
mission.
hospitals in Suffolk don't include it as part of their mission, but they also see some Medicaid patients.
So there is, if you show up on the doorstep of, let's just say,
St. Catherine's in Smithtown.
St. Catherine's, they are legally required, and you have a life-threatening illness, of course, they are legally required to care for you whether they want to or not. I was going to choose a different healthcare system.
A bigger one.
A bigger 22 hospital, just theoretically, 22 hospital healthcare.
26 hospitals.
26.
They bought two more last
They
night.
just got 4 last night.
So, like I said, we receive about $110, $120 million a year in DSH payments. About 80% of it is for our inpatients and our ambulatory patients on Medicaid, and about $25 million of it is for our care of inpatient and ambulatory patients who have no health care insurance. And this is an important number as all of the discussion of the Affordable Care Act and its disappearance comes. A large number of those patients that now have Medicaid have it because of the Affordable Care Act. If the Affordable Care Act goes away, then those patients will become uninsured and will now, instead of getting 67 cents on the dollar, will get 0 cents on the dollar.
How much would that cost us every year?
I'll get there. Good
Great.
question. $23 million as it turns out. Okay, so DSH is paid in 2 installments. We get 2 checks a year. We get a September check and we get an April check. These are big checks. So September came and went, no check. October came and went, no check. November came, we checked on the check, and we got this response: the check is in the mail. December, no check. January, the check shows up, and it was $29 million short of what we were expecting. So you could revise our budget sheet to look like this. Now, as Judy, as Sam said, we're still in negotiations with the state of New York, and this was a state of New York initiated event. The way DSH is paid is the state of New York says, okay, Stony Brook, you should get $120 million. $60 million comes from the Division of Budget, from the Department of Health, and it goes to the feds. The feds match it with another $60 million, and $120 million comes back to Stony Brook. If the state decides to give less than $60 million, the feds will give less than $60 million. And so it's like a double whammy. If the state reduces their commitment to DISH, then we lose twice as much. And unfortunately, there are even more storm clouds ahead. So so as I said, $20 million short in the September check. It's now May, just barely, but no DISH check has shown up yet. So this could be, they could be deciding how much more to give us in the April check than they were planning on, but I suspect not. Now here is the crux of it, and Judy referred to this. There was language, in fact the Senate actually passed it, the Assembly did not, and then it was taken out of the final budget language. The state had proposed that the DISH dollars be capped. So for the 3 hospitals, that the cap in the legislation would be capped at $159 million, and then the following year would be at $170 million. And so when it's 50-50 matched by the feds, there would be a total of $318 million available for the 3 hospitals. The problem is the 3 hospitals were due to get close to $500 million in DISH this year. As a consequence, if that had happened, since we were actually supposed to get $144 million this year to catch up on all of the back pay, and keep that also in mind, please, the DISH is paid in arrears. So we have already cared for the patients 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and now we're being settled up with this $144 million DISH payment. So to break even on Medicaid and on the uninsured patients, we would have received our share of that $318 million would have been $82 million, and that means we would have been short $62 million this year. And when I say this year, I mean the fiscal year that's coming up. It was next budget year. So we would have been greatly shorted if that legislative language had gone through, and as Judy said, it was written in the law, we would have been even more. We would have had no negotiating space. So good news, it was taken out of the legislative language. Now the hard part comes is for us to convince the Department of Health, the Division of Budget, that we deserve, that we earned, that we ought to be compensated to our full amount over those 3 years. I'm gonna skip this. Okay, so to reiterate, DISH is to make us whole for services we already rendered over the last 3 years. It's as if we agreed to pay our contractor and our architects for the MART and the bed tower. We agreed to pay them $424, but when the job was done, well, we only want to pay you $318 million. So again, this has been a retroactive hit to the care we've already provided. And of course, there's possibly more. It was raised, elimination of the Affordable Care Act without DISH to back us up would cost University Hospital another $23 million a year because we're worried that it wouldn't be compensated by DISH. And finally, the final point is, since we are the 3 Musketeers, we're all for one and one for all, Stony Brook University Hospital fiscal fortunes greatly affect the School of Medicine. And so Ken Kashansky, Senior Vice President, will have to tell Ken Kashansky, Dean, his budget, my budget is going to get cut. And that's not a conversation, I talk to myself all the time, but this is not the conversation I want to have with myself. So that's what's going on with DISH. We are really at a big risk if this DISH payment is curtailed the way it was proposed. We were told that the reason that the state curtailed it was because we didn't need the money. We got lots of money in the bank, and why don't we just go ahead and use that? Well, if you look at our cash in the bank, our days cash on hand, if you will, it's 5. So if we didn't get any revenue in for the next 5 days, we would have no more cash in the bank. So it's not like we have a lot of spending money. Across the 3 university hospitals, our hospital, upstate and downstate, upstate and downstate have more money in the bank than we do, because they have been receiving larger dish payments over the last several years. But again, those numbers of dollars in the bank pale in comparison to what the Catholic health system has, of course what Northwell has, Presbyterian, NYU, you name the hospital system, they are far, far, far more likely to have that buffer to take care of the underserved. This is our mission, again, I'll reiterate, this is our mission, and it's cutting at the heart of our mission.
So just to boil it down, as Ken said, this is an arrangement that has been going on for decades, that the state has been willing to put up this share and the federal government has matched it. We have in good faith provided care of the patients with the understanding that we'd be reimbursed for it. These are services that have already been rendered, so as just as Ken said so accurately, it's like you rendered a service and then the state would suddenly decide to say, well, we decided to pass a law that says we don't have to reimburse you for this. I actually think that's illegal, actually to do that, to pass a law that actually voids a state obligation. My understanding of state laws that Sue's not agreeing with, but I think that's illegal, but that's just my non-lawyer view of it. But having said that, it certainly is, is bad policy. We are providing indigent care. It's really ultimately saving costs, of course, for the region, making this a more attractive region for people to live. There's positive benefits from providing care for people in terms of their health long-term for the area, so it's a very important thing that we do. And, it should be reimbursed according to the important thing. And if there's shortfalls that the state is facing that makes it more difficult, we'd certainly be willing to talk to them about extended payment back. I mean, that's something we would talk to them about. But to just cut it off and cap it, I think is really not the right approach.
Well, dangerous.
Yeah.
So we have issues both at the federal level and the state level, and no?
The feds all put their money in.
The feds is just about waiting for the checks,
Yeah.
but we eventually get it.
Yes.
So this is really, the threat is coming from Albany.
Albany.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
So,
So I wanted you guys educated.
good, I'm glad it's on my radar screen now, and I'll be up there next Tuesday. And Judy, I'll coordinate with you on that.
I'm gonna be up there next Tuesday.
Very good. Okay.
Any questions?
No, it's good, and maybe again, at a future meeting, we'll get more of a larger presentation of all the neat things that are happening over on the BMF side of the campus. Ed?
Kevin, Ken, what are our elected officials saying about this dish dilemma? I assume you and Judy and Sam have been talking to them. What are they saying about this?
They probably don't know it, or don't
No,
understand.
they know about it.
Yeah, but they don't understand.
They know about it.
Yeah.
And we have 3 very prominent state senators who have heard us talk about this, Senators Hannan and Laval and Flanagan, and yet the Senate passed the language for the cap. The Assembly have heard, Assemblyman Engelbright, Assemblyman Hasty have heard our arguments. They didn't pass the language, but it got withdrawn. So we're doing everything we can.
Well, that's on the cap, but what about the shortage of the payment?
I think we've worked really hard to educate them, so I think they are educated, but I think it's ultimately the second. Yeah, but I think it's the second floor that really is. They definitely know. Their influence is obviously very important, but they know the issue. And of course, it's it's an issue for Brooklyn. It's an issue for upstate as well. So it's not just a Stony Brook issue. This is an issue that's affecting people in 3 populated regions of the state. So it's important.
Okay, thank you. Good job. Hey, Matt, I understand you're pinch hitting for Peter?
Yep.
And can we always wrap up at 11 o'clock on the dot?
We can do this very, very quickly. So I am presenting to you, and you have seen these in the packet of information, correct, Susan? There are about just over a dozen changes to the formerly the University Student Conduct Code, renamed the Code of Student Responsibility. I can go through them very, very quickly. One is the renaming. The second one is changing the length of the appeal the student has. The third one improves the student withdrawal process. The fourth one codifies the Good Samaritan program, and that program allows students who are under the influence of drugs or of alcohol or other drugs, or have a friend or an associate under the influence of alcohol or other drugs, a safe harbor in getting medical assistance for those students if they need it, without fear of university reprimand or student policy. We have removed some confusing language regarding the hearing levels. We've broadened the category of weapons to be included in the student conduct code. We've added off-campus locations regarding our hazing. We've actually removed some examples from that. We have added language to prohibit counterfeit money. The U.S. Secret Service will thank us for that, and it's actually counterfeit instruments, because keep in mind these days that a student ID card can also be used in financial transactions and other transactions. We've modified the hearing language to just include, we've modified the hearing language to remove reference to electronic devices, because that's already covered in the disruption. We've added sanctions to include residential probation, and we've updated an appendix. We've also added to the consent and coercion definition. All of these have been designed to improve the understanding for the students and the university, to clarify the policies and procedures, and make this process just easier to understand and administer for all involved in the process. And so with that, we would ask for your approval and the information that is in your packet.
Good job, Matt, thanks, and I did go through it. I have a question, but I wanted to defer first to Joe and Cole as students here. Have you had a chance to take a look at these, and do you guys have any comments or questions or concerns?
I mean, I think Dr. Whalen said it best. There was a lot of ambiguity and confusion prior to this, and I think this is a great job streamlining it, making it easier for administrators, making it easier to communicate with the students, and overall I'm very much for it, and especially the revision to the policy where students are now allowed to seek help for their colleagues and friends. Prior, it was very dangerous, both for safety and for medical reasons, that students were inhabited by policy that sort of prevented those to seek help for each other, and that was a major concern. I'm really glad to see it be addressed.
Great, Carl. I'm going to take that in the form of a motion to approve. Joe, any comments?
I agree. I think this it makes it easier to understand what the policy is and streamlines it. And it's positive. I agree with what Cole said.
Good. So it's going to be seconded by Chris. Any comments or questions or revisions on the proposed code of conduct, or student code of responsibility now is what we call it?
Matt, I missed the beginning of it. Sorry, but did you work with Cole and the Student Association, or what are they called?
The University Office of University Community Standards been involved with this. The legal's been involved with this. There have been students in
Conduct code.
That's great. Thanks.
We'll keep the second then.
We'll keep the
You
second.
keep my second.
Sorry.
That's good.
All in favor of the amendments?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thanks, Matt. Next time we'll give you more time, and Judy cut into your time today. Judy and Ken, so you can blame them. Next time we'll give you more time. Is there any other business that any council members want to bring up? Hearing none, I understand Cole and Joe, you guys might be moving on in terms of graduation. One, congratulations. Cole, what are your plans? What are you graduating with, and where you moving on to?
Graduating with a cum laude, and
Nice.
going on to, hopefully, I'm still waiting on a couple of schools, but it looks like William and Mary for next fall. But
For what?
for law.
Oh, awesome.
Congratulations.
Oh,
Another
very
one
good.
of us.
If you come
One
back
of
to
us.
practice on Long Island, let me know if I can help you out. I'd be happy to try to help you.
Thank
And
you.
Joe, what are you doing?
I'm going to have a master's in science and technological systems management. I'm hoping to have a job. Don't have everything lined up yet, but it's the plan.
Well-
Get employment and not live at home. I have a lot of my friends who graduate, but I think because of my education at Stony Brook and a lot of the experience I got here, it will be very helpful in getting employment very soon.
Good. Well, again, you two are two bright guys, and again, if there's anything I can do to help you, or at least put us down as references for stuff, we're happy to. We always appreciate your contribution here to the council. Sam?
Oh, just, it's been a pleasure working with both of you, and Cole is two-time president of undergraduate student government. That's tough to do, so to win re-election, it's incredibly difficult as the undergraduate student government president, or maybe not enough people want to run for it.
I was president of SUNY Albany. There was only one two-time president of SUNY Albany, and that person is Rich Schaefer.
Wow. Yeah, famous leader. So Cole has done a fantastic job, and as I said, it's been an honor and privilege to work with him. And then Joe has been a great vice president of the graduate student organization, who's done a number of things, and actually traveled with us to work with Senator Schumer and others to lobby the federal government on issues that are important to students in the Stony Brook. So I really had a chance to get to know both of them, and as I said before, I very much appreciate their service on the council, and I look forward to seeing you on that day in May. So, yeah.
Absolutely, that too. And do you designate your replacements, or your successor automatically becomes on the council? Well, we don't know that yet.
Switches off and on. So
Graduate, undergraduate?
Yeah, it'll be the graduate member next year.
So at the October meeting, we'll find,
So both come, but only one votes.
right,
Right.
got it. All right, well, again, we wish you guys luck. We got 30 seconds left. Rob, you raised your hand?
Yes. I also wish to announce that my 2-year term as president of the Alumni Association is up in June, so this is also my last council meeting. And I want to thank everyone, and joining me with me. And Bill Saget will be taking over as president. He's president-elect. He'll be taking over in June, so he'll be joining you in future count for the next 8 council meetings in his term.
Very good, Rob. Again, thank you for your service. You always show up at every major and minor event, always wear the SBU flag well, and we thank you for your service as well.
My last comment is, let's keep the branding, and Dr. Stanley, Sam,
Yeah.
you won't be here forever.
Yeah.
Don't let the next president change our brand.
I won't. I'll try not to.
Not you, the council.
Okay. I was going to say my power will be limited. So
I don't think we get a vote in that,
Yeah.
but
Well, get a vote in it.
All right, we have our next meetings. No, we have it here. Well, the next meeting date's gonna be determined, or we have some dates.
Yeah, I think I left them on you.
There we go.
There we go.
Monday, October 2nd will be our next meeting. I know Linda suggested COMAC, and maybe I'll suggest, Sam, if it's okay, we'll say COMAC for the December meeting, because I promised Michael we'd get out to Southampton again in September. October's a much nicer time. If we could maybe do the October meeting at the Southampton campus. And Linda will have to pay for then getting a meeting out in Comac by traveling all the way to Southampton. Have you ever been there? It's a
Oh,
beautiful
yes,
campus.
oh, I have.
But if we can, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't. And then December 4th, so those are our 2 meetings. And are these meetings set in stone for next year already?
I have them on both your
All
calendars,
right.
so if everything.
February 12th, that sounds like a holiday. It's not.
What's December?
It's
No.
October 2nd, December 4th.
Oh, well, actually,
Monday, February 12th is Lincoln's birthday typically, but it's not a holiday for me, but I don't know if it is for Stony Brook.
the following week is the
President's Day?
The following week, the 19th.
Let's just get through the first 2 meetings for the rest
So
of this year.
December 4th.
October 2nd and December 4th, and we'll get back to you.
The
19th is President's Day,
Yes.
okay. Very good. All right, and then February 12th and May 7th. Anything else? It's 11:03, but we started 3 minutes late. All right, motion to adjourn, second, all in favor? Aye, thank you. And have a good, we'll see you at graduation in 2 weeks.
I might not be able to make December 4th, so.